Ferrari kicked off 2025 with a promise to return to the top with Lewis Hamilton at the wheel. But what seemed like a championship dream has turned into a nightmare. And the worst part is we're just starting the season. What's going on at Maranello? Why can't Hamilton and Leclerc even fight for a podium finish? Stay tuned because today we're going to break down the critical situation facing Formula One's most legendary team. In this video you'll discover the key errors behind the technical debacle, the internal tensions that are already coming to light, and Vasseur's controversial decisions that could be burying Ferrari's hopes for 2025. Before we begin, let me know your opinion in the comments. Do you think Ferrari was naive to think that with Hamilton alone they would win championships again? Ferrari began the 2025 season with an ambitious promise to regain its status as a real contender for the world title. The arrival of seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton was not only a media coup, but also a clear message of intent. The Maranello team was no longer willing to remain a supporting player. They implemented a major redesign of their car, the SF25, including a radical change in the front suspension philosophy, moving from a pushrod to a pull rod system, seeking to improve front aerodynamics and optimize the car's handling in fast corners. Everything seemed poised for a season of revival. However, the reality has been a harsh and unprovoked blow. From the opening laps in Bahrain to the most recent disaster at the Chinese Grand Prix, Ferrari has shown symptoms of a problem much deeper than simple setup errors. The car is inconsistent, unstable in different weather conditions, and most alarmingly, slow compared to its main rivals. Instead of fighting with Red Bull and McLaren for the front rows, Ferrari has been trapped in a secondary battle with Mercedes for fourth place in the championship. And in some races such as Australia, they didn't even achieve that. Hamilton finished 10th and Leclerc 8th. A performance that would be considered acceptable for a midfield team, but not for Ferrari. What happened in China marked a turning point. Both Ferraris crossed the finish line in good shape, Leclerc 5th, Hamilton 6th. But the euphoria was short-lived. Hours later, the FIA announced a double disqualification. Leclerc for finishing the race with the car 1 kilo under the minimum permitted weight. Hamilton for excessive wear on the skid plate under the car. The measurement recorded was just 8.5 millimeters, when the regulations require a minimum of 9 millimeters. In both cases, these were uncontested technical violations, which not even Ferrari attempted to dispute. They accepted the penalty immediately. But that is precisely what makes it all the more worrying. These were not incidents caused by extreme race situations, but basic engineering and planning failures. Everything points to a serious lack of understanding of the car itself. During pre-season testing in Bahrain, Ferrari already faced difficulties. Hamilton's car didn't complete dry race simulations due to technical issues. This left the team without crucial data to properly set the car's height and understand wear under real-world conditions. When they arrived in China, Ferrari made adjustments between the sprint race and the main race that ended up drastically altering the car's behavior. And they didn't realize it until it was too late. In a sport where millimeters and grams can decide everything, these kinds of errors aren't just unforgivable. They're a symptom of a team that hasn't mastered its most important tool. And to top it all off, while Red Bull and McLaren seem to find new tenths of a second with each weekend, Ferrari is still looking for ways to get the most out of the current package. The SF25 isn't a total disaster, but it's far from competitive. It has speed at specific moments as Hamilton demonstrated with his pole and sprint victory in China, but it can't maintain that form over a full weekend. The car's operating window is so narrow that any variation on track temperature, tire type, fuel load can turn it from a podium-winning machine into a car that doesn't even make the points. And that, for a team like Ferrari, is a luxury they can't afford. Inside the Ferrari pit, the pressure has only intensified. The season hasn't simply started with disappointing results, but with a crisis that is affecting not only on-track performance but also the team's morale and internal cohesion. What was supposed to be a new chapter of hope with the arrival of Lewis Hamilton is quickly becoming a repeated story of frustration, mistakes, and a constant struggle to understand a car that isn't performing as expected. Team principal Fred Vasseur finds himself at the center of this storm. His approach has been clear from the start, not about hastily introducing improvements, but about thoroughly understanding what they already have. Vasseur insists that the SF25's potential hasn't been fully exploited and that before bringing new parts to the car, they need to address structural issues such as the car's overall balance, optimal ride height, and tire interaction under different conditions. In theory, his philosophy makes sense. There's no point in updating a car whose behavior is still unpredictable. But in practice, this approach is generating tensions, both internal and external. The drivers, especially Hamilton, have not hidden their frustration. The Briton has been blunt in stating that Ferrari is clearly behind its direct rivals in terms of downforce and overall performance. When a driver with his level of experience and track record makes such a public statement, the message is clear. The team is not delivering what it promised. Leclerc, although more reserved, has also expressed concerns about the car's lack of consistency, especially in mixed conditions. Both drivers seem to be clamoring for the team to accelerate development, but Vasseur continues to advocate for a strategy of patience and optimization. And this difference in priorities is creating a dangerous gap. Because while other teams like McLaren and Mercedes are already introducing significant improvements, Ferrari remains stuck in a diagnostic phase. The risk is obvious. By the time the updates arrive, it may already be too late to close the gap in the championship. In Formula 1, every 10th counts, and every lost weekend is an opportunity that never comes back. Vasseur knows this, and that's why he sticks to his plan, remembering that in 2024 they managed to shave off as much as 0.6 of a second during the season. But that comeback was the exception, not the rule. Furthermore, recent mistakes have called into question his leadership ability. The double fiasco in China with both technical disqualifications was not only a competitive blow, but a public relations disaster. The way the post-Grand Prix narrative was handled, particularly the controversy surrounding Hamilton's radio audio, made the situation even worse. Vasseur publicly lashed out at FOM, accusing them of manipulating the context of the radio messages to create artificial drama. According to him, the edit omitted the part where Hamilton offered to let Leclerc pass, and only showed his most blunt response, "I'll tell you when we can change," creating an image of disobedience that doesn't reflect reality. These kinds of controversies fuel the feeling that Ferrari is failing not only technically, but also in its image management and internal cohesion. A team like Ferrari, under the constant spotlight of the media and fans, cannot afford to show cracks in its structure. And even less so when there's a figure like Hamilton in the garage, a driver who doesn't tolerate mediocrity and who has already experienced similar episodes in his recent years with Mercedes. Vasseur, for now, maintains his position. The car has potential and improvements will come when the time is right. But in the meantime, the pressure is mounting, results are lacking, and the atmosphere within the team grows increasingly tense. The margin for error shrinks with each Grand Prix. If the decisions being made today don't translate into real progress in the coming weeks, Ferrari could not only lose this season, but also the trust of its star drivers. The outlook facing Ferrari for the remainder of the 2025 season is as uncertain as it is challenging. After a start filled with broken promises, the Maranello team is in a critical position where every decision counts, and every mistake can cost not only points, but also the future of the project they built around Lewis Hamilton. Fred Vasseur's approach has been clear so far. Before introducing aerodynamic or technical improvements, it is necessary to fully understand how the SF25 works. But this strategy has a limit, and that limit is called time. In Formula 1, the calendar waits for no one. Updates are on the way, but Vasseur himself has warned that they won't be miraculous. And that's a key point. In previous seasons, Ferrari has demonstrated resilience mid-championship, as happened in 2024 when they managed to close a gap of 0.6 over their rivals. But this year the context is different. The competition has taken a qualitative leap. McLaren, for example, has not only developed a fast car, but also an extremely efficient one in tire management, allowing them to maintain pace on long runs without sacrificing performance in qualifying. Mercedes, although far from the level of 2020, has found stability in its technical development. And Red Bull, despite its internal problems and the tension with Verstappen, remains a benchmark in aerodynamic efficiency and overall balance. Ferrari, on the other hand, has failed to establish a solid foundation on which to build. The SF25 has had brilliant moments such as Hamilton's pole position and sprint victory in China, but they are just that, moments. There is no continuity. There is no reliability in race pace. And what's worse is that there's no room for error, because any misstep in development can make the situation even worse. If the improvements about to be introduced don't quickly translate into tangible results, the team risks becoming trapped in a downward spiral, where driver frustration turns into internal mistrust. In this context, Hamilton's role will be crucial. His signing was more than a sporting move, it was a strategic statement. But that commitment is being put to the test. Lewis isn't a driver who tolerates excuses. He already experienced this in his final years at Mercedes, where technical stagnation kept him from fighting for the championship. At Ferrari, he expected an ambitious project, with clear technical direction and a total commitment to success. So far, he's received a mixture of wasted potential and basic errors. If the situation doesn't improve, tensions could escalate. And that would affect not only the present, but also the future decisions of the British driver, who arrived in Maranello with the intention of closing out his career at the top, not dragging himself in the midfield. The other big question mark is Charles Leclerc. Although he has been at Ferrari longer and knows the environment better than anyone, he is also under pressure. His relationship with the team has been one of ups and downs, marked by great personal performances and collective disappointments. On more than one occasion, he has hinted that his patience is not infinite. If Ferrari doesn't offer him a competitive car in the short term, it wouldn't be surprising if he started considering other options, especially if seats open up at leading teams. What's coming next for Ferrari is, in short, a race against time. It's not enough to promise that improvements will come. They have to work. They have to translate into points, podiums, and, if possible, a victory. Because in this sport, the narrative changes quickly, but reputations take years to rebuild. Ferrari has a car with potential, 2 elite drivers, and a technical structure that has demonstrated moments of brilliance. But it needs to execute. It needs to turn every weekend into a real opportunity to climb the rankings. And above all, it needs to demonstrate that this project with Hamilton wasn't just a marketing ploy, but a serious plan to return to the top. What we're seeing from Ferrari during this 2025 season isn't just a series of technical stumbles or execution errors. It's a clear warning that the most iconic team in the history of Formula One still hasn't resolved the deep roots of its instability. The arrival of Lewis Hamilton was supposed to be the turning point, a new beginning with a figure capable of transforming pressure into performance, experience into results. But so far, what he's found in Maranello is an unpredictable car, conservative decisions, and a structure that has yet to fine-tune its operational processes to compete at the highest level. Today we analyzed how the SF25, despite showing flashes of potential, is falling short compared to the constant evolution of teams like McLaren and Mercedes. We saw how Vasseur, in his attempt to maintain control and avoid past mistakes, has opted for restraint and optimization, rather than risking new parts without first understanding the foundation. But that restraint has begun to clash with the urgency of results, media pressure, and the frustration of drivers who didn't come to Ferrari to build from scratch, but to win. The tension within the team is evident, not only from what happens inside the garage, but also from how it's managed externally. The radio tampering controversy, Vasseur's fierce defense in the press, and the increasingly critical narrative surrounding Hamilton's performance are clear signs of a team struggling not only on the track but also in the realm of public perception. And that's dangerous, because when media pressure and results aren't forthcoming, even the best designed projects can crumble from within. So, what can Ferrari expect from the rest of 2025? Everything will depend on 2 fundamental factors: the actual effectiveness of the upcoming updates and the team's ability to unite its efforts around a common goal. It's not enough to introduce new parts if there isn't an environment that translates them into performance. It's not enough to have 2 world-class drivers if the car doesn't allow them to compete on equal terms. And it's not enough to point out past mistakes if there's no decisive action to avoid repeating them. Now, the question remains, can Ferrari turn this situation around before the season slips away entirely? Or are we facing another year where expectations will once again be buried under the frustration of what could have been but wasn't? Leave your opinion in the comments. Who needs to make the final move at Ferrari? Hamilton, Vasseur, the technical director? Or was this simply not the year to dream? And if you're interested in keeping up with this roller coaster ride that the 2025 season is turning out to be, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell, because in the next video we'll talk about the great silent threat, McLaren, which is surprising everyone with its consistency and ability to read races like no one else on the grid. A strategic battle is coming that could change everything, and you won't want to miss it.